Hello, and welcome to The Charge Cycle, an electrifying new podcast on all things fleet electrification. I'm Todd Trauman, I'm the CEO of Emission Control. If you are a procurement manager, a fleet operator, or one of the millions of people tasked with a zero-emission deployment goal, this podcast is for you. We speak with industry experts, funding experts, OEMs, and many others to help you stay ahead of this enormous electrification shift underway. Hello, and welcome back to The Charge Cycle, an electrifying new podcast on all things fleet electrification. I am Todd Trauman. I'm the CEO of Emission Control and your host here. Today, I am extremely excited to bring on Matt LeDucq, the CEO of Forum Mobility. Forum Mobility is a fleet as a services company providing charging infrastructure, charging solutions, and other technology badly needed in the port and especially the drayage ecosystems. Matt, he's a 15-year veteran in the renewable space. He's personally responsible for $5+ billion in clean energy project deployment, and now heavily focused on zero emission and heavy duty vehicle deployments in the ports and drayage space. Matt, welcome to The Charge Cycle.
Thanks, Todd. Excited to be here.
So just to get started, I don't want to dive right into mobility, but I do know that you have your roots in construction and some roots in things that are a little bit more typically blue collar. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown on really where you cut your teeth in these types of industries?
Yeah, I got out of college early in 2002, and my father is a union foreman. My brother's in the trades. I had always worked in the trades and got a job in the trades. And I was at that time when I was working in the field in my hometown up in Sonoma County that I came across a company called Powerlight, and they were doing solar. And I thought it would be what a great thing to do construction, something I knew and liked, and also do something that was meaningful. And that's how I got into renewables. I got a job as an installation manager and installation supervisor back in the really, really early days of solar, and had a chance to work with a lot of great people and get my teeth cut, like you said, on the roof of solar. Subsequently worked my way through construction management, project management, and then ended up on the investment side some years later.
And tell us a little bit. I mean, mobility is a bit of a stretch from solar in these days, and I know that Forum's really kind of made a big splash just really in the last couple of years. So run us up a bit, just how you landed in the mobility space and kind of where you came from just in the last few years as it relates to Forum, and maybe touch on too that I believe that there's a connection to Forum Energy, and kind of maybe explain through really what that is a bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got a taste for mobility at NextEra. I had the benefit of running distributed generation at NextEra for 7 years, where we did a few $1 billion worth of investment in the distributed asset space. And that included things like community solar, that included non-wires deals, distribution level storage. And not unlike a lot of investors, NextEra was looking to constantly expand its invested capital base. And that was something I was in charge of, is where do we go from here on the distribution system? And it was there that I kind of stumbled upon this mobility piece. And it was thought, it looked and smelled a whole lot like solar did back when I started in 2003 and 4 and 5. You'd had OEMs being developers becoming OEMs, EPCs becoming developers. It's just kind of a little bit of a free-for-all, and then also a free-for-all on the incentive side. And so I was pretty excited about it. And we bought a company called EIQ at NextEra, which was a nice entry point into the mobility space. But when I left NextEra in 2020, I kind of had my eyes on this. I joined, like you said, the Forum Energy Partners team, Tom, Topher, and Bobby. Those are Tom Dotson, Topher Wood, and Bobby Batista. They had a platform, Forum Energy Partners, where we oversee assets for infrastructure funds. We do a little bit of EPC work. We're building a 50 megawatt project in Idaho today. We built some community solar projects for Greenbacker. But one of the things we wanted to do with that platform, we have some capable engineers and some very capable project executives, was where is this going to go next? And one of the things we wanted to do was push our way into the electrification space. And it was then we started to contemplate spinning out a new company. And that's where Forum Mobility came from. And Forum Mobility started in early 2021, really with a mission. We thought that there was going to be a big need, and we still think this, for large third-party depots. the amount of charging infrastructure that needs to be managed and the amount of fleets that are going to need to be put into depots is just immense, and it's not going to happen behind the fence. It's not going to happen at people's properties. And so we went in with this thesis of, well, we're going to need to do third-party depots. We know we can build them. We know we can structure and financially structure them. We understand the market, and that's where Forum Mobility was born. We thought that we could get something going at an early time and build something really meaningful in a space that needs the execution capability. We think that we bring a really unique set of skills in terms of our ability to build, operate. I mean, that's what we do. That's in the blood of the company. And so that's when Forum Mobility was born last year.
That's fantastic. And, I know that there's an inherent focus on drayage, and I want to talk about that. I do also want to talk about the concept, really, of what depot charging is because I feel like that's a little bit more of a new age concept as it relates to EVSE or major Class 8 vehicle deployments as well. But I think it's a concept that isn't very well known yet. And so I'm curious, was depot charging really the goal at the outset because these are problems that you guys identified early on, or is this relatively newer compared to your age development?
Yeah, and as much as you say it's a departure from renewables, it's not a huge departure, right? You have you have generation, you have load. A lot of these things are electrons moving back and forth at a facility with a certain amount of ability to either push or pull electrons onto or off the grid. So it's not a huge departure when you think about the structure of one of these assets. And when we looked at the third-party depot market, it was pretty obvious that when you looked at the ARB's goals, and you looked at the size of the fleets, and you looked at what needed to happen to charge those fleets, you're talking about a minimum of 50 to 75 kW kind of for overnight charging, and then fast charging of 150 to 350 to even the talk of the MCS, the megawatt chargers, that this was going to not happen behind the fence. That somehow, some way, from municipal fleets to box trucks to school buses to street sweepers to you name it, there was going to be a need for a lot more than you could put on a piece of switchgear in the back of your building. Not to mention the host of real estate problems that come with doing things behind the fence, which is very much a distributed energy problem on the real estate side. So the depot was pretty clear to us when you just kind of started breaking down the modular level of what does a truck or a vehicle need to do, how much charge does it need to happen, how many of them are going to have to exist. And then you start doing the math in California, and you start realizing that it's thousands and thousands of megawatts of charging capacity that needs to be built and online over the next 5 or 10 years alone. And a lot of that's going to have to go to drayage.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about the benefits here. So depot charging, clearly just the getting infrastructure and copper pull to every single facility out there that is looking to electrify, clearly a huge problem, especially when talking about these advanced goals and advanced kind of regulatory programs coming out in the ARBs, from the ARB especially. But there's a lot of other inherent benefits, I feel like, from depot charging. And I kind of want to talk through some of those and maybe also what some of the headaches are ultimately. So things like, you guys, if you guys are doing depot charging, maybe have better access to incentives or might know the utility a little bit better. Can you kind of speak to just other major benefits really associated with depot charging here?
Yeah, I think anybody who's gone and done a major electrical project at their facility will probably start to understand, and any of the listeners out there that have already started to deal with this, it's not easy, right? Monetizing an LCFS credit isn't easy. Applying for an EnergIIZE application isn't easy. Getting an HVIP application through is not easy. Dealing with SCE, PG&E, LEDWP, or whatever your municipal utility is also not easy. And coordinating all of that and then running a good asset. I mean, not to mention that the chargers themselves, they do take some software, they do take some know-how. You just have a lot of points where your economics or your operations can break down. And if you put it in somebody's bucket like ours, and there's other folks doing what we do, our job is to run a depot. And it's, there's a little bit of an analogy to utility scale versus distributed solar, and that we are aggregating a large field. We are consolidating O&M. We are financially optimizing. We are incentive optimizing. We are engineering, procuring, and constructing optimizing. You get those benefits of scale, and with the depot, you get a really, really important benefit, which is You get staff on site. You get security on site, which I think anybody out there who is dealing with heavy-duty trucking, especially in and around the ports, knows the importance of parking, A, secured parking, B, and having somebody there every day to fix the problems that happen. And that's something we, I think, as an operator, as I alluded to earlier, are really focused on is putting these large charging facilities together and operating them well. And by doing these at scale, we get the benefits of scale. You get the lower capital costs per charger. You get lower O&M costs per charger. And you can financially optimizing is also not to be kind of underrepresented. As you start pumping 10, 15, $20 million of capital into a site, there's different things you can do to optimize that asset and deliver the value back to the customer. And so we are quite certain that you can charge a truck at one of our 50 to 100 truck depots a heck of a lot more economically than you can behind the building.
And to be clear, just kind of following up on that, to be clear, the business model here doesn't necessitate that someone purchase or utilize your own assets, right? Your own Class 8. So if I'm investing in my own operations, but I don't think I can get the utility to get my upgrades as needed, am I able to access your site?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, the trucks to us are a means to an end. We're excited about providing trucks. We have our first 3 trucks showing up next week, as a matter of fact. And we have some more. We have 2 different OEMs showing up at that site shortly thereafter, and so we have no issue at the early days of providing the trucks. There is an efficient. Back to my point about efficiency. There is an efficient capital source for trucks. We're excited to see that the OEMs are going to spin up their vehicle leasing arms in the Volvos and Kenworths and PACCARs of the world. There is a wonderful market for equipment leasing, and that's going to fill a need. But in the interim, we are structured and set up quite well to provide trucks and charging as a service at a simple kind of monthly fee price.
Yeah, perfect. Accessibility is an enormous need in the short term here. Speaking of kind of term lengths here, I do want to talk about the advanced clean fleets rule or advanced clean fleets rule a little bit, but more importantly, I do want to focus specifically on drayage. You guys have come out very strongly about drayage, about the use case for this type of business model. I don't want to peel that onion just a little bit more. So, give us some context around that. Is it specially or specifically focused because of the duty cycle arrangements here? What other major kind of considerations are there related to the focus on drayage?
There's a lot. I mean, drayage is it's huge. It's important. It's fragmented. Scope 3 emissions are brutal. We are a mission-driven company. We are here to do something very specific, and drayage is, in my view, the most worthy cause to attack in California. It has a lot of the attributes to grow a business as well. I mean, there's 33,000 drayage trucks in California registered today, over 20,000 of those going in and out of the ports every day, and over 80% of those trucks independent operators today. Now, AB5, there's a ruling about independent contractors that's going to create some consolidation in the business, but drayage is forced to mandate. It is mandated to convert between now and 2035. But advanced clean fleets, as you alluded to, you're going to have thousands of trucks having to change from combustion to electric starting in just over a year and a half, under a year and a half, actually. And that's a big deal. I mean, that you have a lot of little tiny fleets who are going in and out of places like Wilmington and West Oakland. And drayage is a place where I've said this to you before, you have economic, environmental justice really fighting each other. Mm-hmm. And a solution needs to be made for the communities in and around the ports. I read a stat that Wilmington, California has a 98% higher likelihood if you live there to contract cancer than if you live in the broader LA Basin. So absolutely, Wilmington, West Oakland, and the communities surrounding ports deserve cleaner air. That's a must. But on the flip side of that, the men and women that drive the trucks in and out of those ports deserve not to be left behind in this transition just because they're a small fleet. And so I think drayage has got a lot. I mean, it's got a lot of scale. It's got a huge impact environmentally. It's right in the middle of our supply chain. So, the critical operations of drayage are important. We think it's tailored well to our skill sets. And so there's really everything about drayage we like. There's nothing about drayage that is specific to our business model. It's just the market that we're attacking first. And we think that focusing on this, it allows us to focus on policy. It allows us to focus on customers. It allows us to focus on something. We can replicate the business model in other verticals, but drayage is where we want to spend our time.
Absolutely, makes a lot of sense. And that said, depot charging is often seemingly a newer concept for a lot of fleet operators, for a lot of drayage operators, a lot of small mom and pops that are going to have to comply with the ACF rule here, and may not know a whole lot about it, the rule in the first place, but certainly not so much about the technology, maybe even less so about depot charging. In some of the outreach that you have done, how is this being received? How much of a shift change is this really going to be for a lot of customers, or is it maybe not so bad?
I think it's being viewed with the appropriate level of skepticalness. You got to put yourself in the shoes of a small fleet. These are men and women who've gone out and they've bought trucks and made a living driving diesel and been doing it this way for decades. And now being forced to do something that is untested in large part. I think there's less than 50 drayage trucks operating that are battery electric in California today. And you don't have a lot of trucks on the road to prove the concept. So when we go talk to our customers, and we have independent operator customers, and we have some small logistics, we have beneficial cargo owner customers. I think especially at the smaller customer side, I think everybody's excited. They like the prospect of having a quiet truck. They like the prospect of having a technologically advanced truck with safety considerations. They like the fact that they're not going to be burning diesel while they're idling. I think there's a lot of excitement about electric trucks. But there's also a lot of, is it going to work? Is it really 2.1 kilowatt hours per mile? And does that happen if I run the air conditioner? Does it happen if my container is fully loaded? And I think those are really appropriate skepticisms for these customers to have, because there isn't a lot of data. It's why we're really excited about the pilot project and understanding, truly, what is the efficiency of these trucks. Are they performing versus their manufacturer specifications? We've heard that they are. We've heard that people have been pleasantly surprised. But I think if I was in their shoes, I would be probably about the same. I would say, yeah, this sounds great. It sounds good, but prove to me it works before I go spend $250,000 after rebates on one of these trucks, or enter into a 3 to 5 year contract with somebody like Forum.
Yeah, big time. So, you guys are purchasers of this stuff. You're as close as anybody to the OEMs and where they're at in this technology. Talk about a little bit about what you guys did to go find the units that you're rolling out here pretty soon. Talk to us about kind of that process, assuming that, your owned assets will be a pretty big part of your guys' future. How are you thinking about this stuff as you provide the services to customers?
Yeah, we're not thinking about it terribly dissimilar to the way we think about integrating critical equipment into a power plant. You want to use something that's been proven. You want to use something that you can go talk to people who have dealt with it. You want to use something that is ideally you can go in and finance, because the warranty holder is an entity that is in fact financeable. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the check boxes that we look for on the OEM side are not too dissimilar if you were picking a wind turbine or a solar panel or a inverter. You don't want to take something that's new and untested and deliver it to a client. That's just not where we are as a business. That's not what we're looking to do as a business. I think there's a great place for strategic and new OEMs to go out there and deliver brand new spanking products to folks. For us, we're looking more at the Volvos and the BYDs and the Kenworths of the world, because we can go and we can talk to their customers, which we did. We know we're getting several BYDs, and we have a Volvo coming, and we've talked to their customers, we've talked to those OEMs, and we know that the specifications of which they call out in their spec sheets are in fact the ones that are happening in reality, and that the uptime and availability and the servicing is all happening kind of as expected. Because again, I think there's just, I go back to the critical nature of operations, and we have to focus on delivering a product both on the charging side and the truck side that works flawlessly. and that we are all over from a monitoring and software and maintenance standpoint. It's like any technology at the very beginning, people are going to look for problems, right? I mean, you think about the Tesla self-driving car crash, right? Like every single time there's an autopilot self-driving incident, it is called out. I think that is kind of the price you pay with new technologies. It's under a microscope. And so we know that we are essentially representing those OEMs as our solution. And so our job as that service provider is to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to vet the product that we're delivering and then have a plan if things don't work out, because things don't work out. And anybody who's in the trucking industry knows that. Anybody who's in the power industry knows that. And so working with folks who we think not only have proven technology, but they've got a plan. They've got a plan if something doesn't happen. And so I think we've done a good job, as good as a job as you can with where Class 8 trucks are in the electric world today. But we're excited about what we've seen from these OEMs. We're excited to see that they are performing well, that their uptime is actually outstanding, and the customer satisfaction of those who are driving them is pretty darn high.
Yeah, I mean, especially so for your guys' beachhead market. I mean, if we're talking about drayage, these are operators where that uptime is a premium, where space is at a premium, where their lack of operational downtime is a very important aspect of what they do relative to a lot of other industries, right? Making sure that you guys are able to execute with the technology and really repping that technology is absolutely paramount. And so, the port ecosystems, the drayage ecosystems, I mean, they're as tough as they possibly can be on technologies to ensure that they last forever. And I do see a lot of that kind of shifting towards the zero emission vehicle space to really trying to make sure they're batting down the hatches on the technologies. And so, I think being able to have you guys there as a reliable partner, almost as kind of a third party, a trusted resource that is also out there vetting these types of technologies and these OEMs and their products year on year is going to be really valuable to them.
Yeah. And just again, I think getting these pilot trucks on the road and getting trucks into our system and into the software and making sure that we understand how things go as we're pulling containers and we're going in and out of the port, the more data we can get, the more we can help our customers get educated. And I think as we start building our depots, offering the opportunity for OEMs to come use our depots to help us jointly market these things together. And I'll use like the TEC is a dealership up in Northern and Southern California, and they talked about it's about a 2-hour process to sell a diesel truck, and it's about a 6-month process to sell an electric truck. And I think that's justified, right? And I hope that as we have our depots up and running, we can have people come out and we can show them how they run. We could put them on a container. We can have them pull that container around, and we can start, I think, bridging this gap between miles per gallon and kilowatt hours per mile, because if you're going to go towards electric, you're going to have to understand kilowatt hours per mile. And I don't think there's a better way to do that than to get behind the wheel of a truck. And like I said, turn up the air conditioner, go up a hill, go down a hill. Very importantly, go down a hill and use your regenerative brakes to charge it, and start getting that correlation and context to understand how these things perform. Because like I said at the beginning, I mean, in large part, the ARB has created a market for Forum to be in. I also don't envy what ARB has done to the small fleets out there. I mean, they're forcing a change under some really, really expensive equipment that if you do it in a very specific way and monetize all these credits, is incredibly economic. But it's coming hard and it's coming fast, and there isn't a lot of data to make anybody feel comfortable yet. So the more we can gather and the more we can execute and operate and pull that data in and share that with our forthcoming customers, it's important for all of us, because it's a hell of a transition that's going on right now, especially in drayage.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more that we can centrally locate this stuff, I mean, not just physically, but centrally locate these concepts and these discussions with agencies and these discussions with utilities, keeping everything in-house with professionals managing that full time is going to be absolutely key, seemingly, if we're going to try to meet these targets that have been established by the ARB. But yeah, point well taken. So, I mean, this concept seems like it makes a lot of sense. It seems like it's a lot more realistic than trying to get, charging systems installed in the backyard and behind the fence, like you mentioned, at every facility. facility in the state. But so kind of on this, tell us a little bit more about the project. Tell us about the pilot you have going on, where you're at in the process, and then tell us about the kind of what's on the next like 12 and 24-month horizon for Forum here.
Yeah, the first project is with a really, really special customer. A guy named Rudy Diaz runs Height Logistics Beach. And I think that Height Logistics is exactly what a lot of the logistics providers in the drayage world look like. Rudy has run that business for going on 20 years. It's a successful business. They run about 60 trucks a day. They've historically run independent operators. And now with AB5, that's all changing. And like many of these providers out there, these logistics providers, Rudy's had to make the decision to bring employed drivers in-house. And so the first 5 trucks that we're delivering to Rudy, and we're building a depot adjacent to his building that's just going to take 6 trucks at that depot. And those first 5 trucks that we're delivering to Rudy are going to be folks who were independent operators are now becoming Rudy's employed drivers. And this transition is going to play itself out, I think, all across the drayage market, and probably the trucking market as a result of AB5 in California. And so that project is perfect. It's essentially it's a micro depot of ours. We were fortunate to find Rudy, and we were fortunate to find a landowner that had an unusual amount of excess electrical capacity, and those things coincided, and we were able to get trucks and revenue and all the things a small young company like ours needs within the first year of us being up and running. And so that's a really special project with a really remarkable customer. Rudy's I can't say enough about him. He's all in on the environmental side. He's all in on the community. He's all in on bringing these drivers in as employees and treating them right. He's just one of those people who does things the right way, and I can't say enough good things about him. And he's allowing us to get our business up and running. So my indebtedness to Rudy is off the charts. But what's going on now is that we have about 500 trucks worth of facilities under development. We have a good amount of sites under control at this point, and we're going through all the processes that you're going to have to go through. We're going through the load hosting capacity process with utilities, which is all sorts of fun, twists and turns in the road, and working with our friendly IOUs in California. And we're going through the entitlement process. We're working through a financing right now as well, which is going to allow us to scale immensely. And so I think the next 12 to 20 months, you're going to see us what we call NTP, which is breaking ground, essentially, notice to proceed, on several hundred trucks worth of facilities. And over the next 20 months, you're going to see those facilities up and running and turning into the beehives that I'm envisioning for a heavy-duty truck depot that runs 24/7.
Yeah, big bees at that beehive there. And thanks to Rudy. Hopefully he is a fantastic champion for you guys moving forward. With Rudy's facility there, it sounds like that's a 6 or so truck depot you had mentioned before. But, these depots are really envisioned to be much bigger. You said a couple hundred. Are these units that are 25, 50 a piece? Or what's the rough scale? What's the rough expectation someone might see kind of driving into one that's developed?
So when talking to Rudy, talking to other drivers, talking to independent operators, I think we know that scale is important for a couple of reasons. Like scale is important. The things I talked about, aggregating low carbon fuel standard credits, making sure that we can take advantage of incentives, scaling the construction costs, scaling the operations costs. We also need these facilities staffed. If there's one thing we have heard and seen and noted over and over is that truck parking is important. And secure truck parking is really, really important. It is pretty rampant in the areas around ports, the theft of trucks and vandalism of trucks. And so we need to build depots that can support security, they can support our attendance. And you're looking at facilities that are going to be, at the very minimum at 50, unless there's a very strategic site. But ideally, our ideal facility is 100 trucks and up. And that's so that we can deliver a lot of things. We can deliver the scale that delivers economic value across the board, but it's also so we can deliver service, right? A project has to bear the cost of 24/7 security and 24/7 staff. And so you need some scale for that too. So there's a whole host of reasons for the depot model, and that customer having the kind of the feeling that they had that their truck is under lock and key 24/7 is one of those.
Yeah, this is an expensive asset. I mean, these things need to be protected. These people, especially again, if they own them themselves and are trusting you guys to let these things boost up overnight, it's a big deal. So moving, thinking again, that's a big bite to chew on, just collectively as an idea. I mean, electrifying drayage at many hundred locations across at a minimum of 100 apiece. That's a big project and a big undertaking for a company of any size, frankly. But you, CEO, big idea guy, when you're thinking beyond that, where is this idea applicable also? Is this LTL stuff? Is this last mile delivery potentially? Is this kind of concept, immediately applicable in some other industries? Maybe speak to that just a little bit and kind of put your CEO hat on here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's nothing about our business model that isn't replicable in other verticals. We're choosing to focus on drayage because we think it acutely needs a solution. And it does. It needs one. It needs the fragmented nature, the mandates on the regulatory side. It needs a solution. But, I mean, garbage trucks need this. School buses need this. I mean, the maritime. I mean, the ferry systems of the Seattle Port ferry system is going to electrify. There isn't a lot of difference in terms of the assets when you have an electric charging facility and you have something that goes back and forth on that thing. And the way you, again, engineer, procure, construct, finance, optimize, all of that is pretty darn replicable. The way we vet the OEMs, the way we work with the OEMs, that is highly applicable. Like you said, to last mile, that could go for anything. Municipal fleets, there's a lot of places where we could take for them. But in the meantime, the ports of California there's a lot to bite there. There's many, many billions of dollars of infrastructure that needs to get built. I mean, actually, if you just take a look back and you think about the 20+ thousand trucks that go in and out of the ports and the 33,000 trucks worth of trucks on the drayage registry in California, I mean, you need over 2,000 megawatts of charging infrastructure to charge all those. And to put some context, it's not exactly apples to apples out there for you energy folks, but Diablo Canyon is about 2.2 gigawatts. You need a little bit more than 2.2 gigawatts worth of charging infrastructure for drayage. And so I'm excited about what we can do, and we are going to end up doing a lot of different things as we grow and mature as a company. Our personalities, myself and the co-founders, is to focus pretty acutely, I would say, and drayage is where we're going to do it. But there is, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to replicate this model in different verticals and in different countries.
Yeah, and is the focus right now all things electrification? Are we looking into the hydrogen space at all, or what's the short-term fuel support, source likely to be for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're excited about hydrogen. We're not focused whatsoever on it, though. I hope that there is a great hydrogen solution for our transportation industry at some point. Today, there isn't one. Again, drayage needs a solution today. You have in 2023, you have the clean truck rule, getting anything with a 2009 model engine or older truck no longer accessing the port. 2024, under the proposed advanced clean fleet rules, you have trucks being forced to transition to zero emission. There isn't a hydrogen truck out there today that can be delivered in 2024 at scale. So our point on battery electrification and drayage is that it's here, it exists, it's financeable. There's a lot of capital that can go towards this. We can do it at scale, and it fits this duty cycle well. Are electric trucks good today for somebody who wants to do 400 or 500 miles? No. Maybe someday in the future, when megawatt charging is a thing, and the grids can support things like megawatt charging, which has its own challenges. But today we can deliver a solution, and that solution is economic to us. And again, for anybody who has a renewable energy background, you had this debate with polysilicon and concentrating solar power 15, 18 years ago, where where there was this big debate of these two. And what happened was that polysilicon was the thing that worked. And so there was all these renewable portfolio standards, and there was a certain amount of renewables on the grid that had to come. And that ended up getting filled with the thing that worked today. We think that's battery electric. I hope for a host of reasons, for my kids, for the future of our air and environment, that there's a hydrogen solution too. But we know that battery electric works today. Battery electric works for this. Battery electric is economic. And battery electric can attract an immense amount of capital as well, which is really important. We need to be able to bring financing to something now in the drayage space.
Absolutely. It fits really, really well, with fleets that might be mixed as well. I mean, these solutions apply equally for drayage that may have yard truck technologies that are battery electric currently that also don't exist in the hydrogen space, right?
That's right.
But yeah, absolutely. So very cool technologies, very cool platform, very cool company that you guys have going here, Matt. I think if you were to wave your magic wand and get your technologies deployed all over the state, what would you have pointed back to as the biggest hurdle for you? Clearly, you guys are solving a lot of problems for folks by centralizing a lot of these technologies and ideas and problems with the regulatory agencies and utilities. But today, what is the kind of number one thing that is the most challenging problem for you, that if you had a way to alleviate it, you could?
I think right now, you have customer adoption is justifiably, I wouldn't call it a problem, but it's a hurdle, in that there's a lot of proving that needs to happen. And I think that's healthy, right? We're going to spend a lot of time with a lot of customers making sure that they feel comfortable putting their livelihood into our facilities and vehicles. But if I had to take a look at my magic wand in the future, what is going to be the big issue for us? It's going to be grid hosting capacity. Our grid, we're talking about not only the grid hosting capacity, but our ability to entitle and permit a facility in these areas is going to be the biggest obstacle. And we're all going to get through the low-hanging fruit pretty quick. And there's a few of us working on that, and I think we're all probably going in the same direction. But after that low-hanging fruit is gone, it's going to get really hard, really fast to find grid hosting capacity. And when I say grid hosting capacity, it's when you look outside your window on that distribution line. There might be no megawatts and there might be 10 megawatts available on that. The chances are it's on the lower end. Utilities have not been specializing in overbuilding their grid and burdening the ratepayers with that for the last several decades. So what you have is a grid that is not really ready for the amount of electrification. Because remember, what I was talking about, a couple thousand megawatts just for drayage. We're not talking about the box trucks. We're not talking about the Ubers, and we're not talking about the municipal fleets and the school buses. We're talking about like thousands and thousands of megawatts that are going to have to be put on this grid over the next 10 years. And I think that the utilities are going to have to find a way to, one, optimize and kind of integrate into their current grid, and two, we're going to have to figure out how to proactively upgrade in advance. There's a way that grids typically get upgraded, and it isn't fast enough for this market. It's going to need to go faster than what's done typically back at the PUC to upgrade distribution substations and feeders out there. So I think today you're looking at a bunch of skeptical customers that we've got to spend a lot of time with, and I think that's an exciting part of our business to get them comfortable with it. I think that's going to work itself out over time. But if I took a look at that magic wand in 3 or 5 years, it's going to be, where the heck's the capacity? Where are we building our next 200 truck depot? Because I do believe, I'm playing telephone with a fact, but I do believe our head of regulatory told me that there's about 57 chargers a day that need to be built between now and 2035, if I'm not mistaken. And the grid's going to have a problem with that pretty quick.
So just following up on that real quick, Matt, considering all of the work that we have to do with the grid, considering how much uncertainty there may be in the overall grid scale generation that needs to come to support all of this electrification in and outside of the heavy duty sector, are you guys thinking about hedging this in some way? I mean, you have a significant renewables background, your team does. How is that going to kind of play into either what you're doing at Forum or maybe at a little bit of a bigger scale relative to the needs of the grid?
Yeah, I mean, hedging is one way to say it. I think optimizing is the other way to look at it, in that each of these facilities needs to be optimized, right? We need to deliver the lowest cost per mile product possible to accelerate the adoption. The bottom line is on-site generation is typically less expensive than grid power. And so when you're talking about renewables on-site, it has two benefits. You have the benefit of it being a lower cost source of generation. And you also have the added benefit with increasing the value of your carbon offsets, your LCFS. And so I think it's a good advantage of ours. We certainly know distributed generation. I did a few $1 billion worth of it at NextEra. We've built it ourselves. We've operated ourselves. We've structured it ourselves. And so it has to be part of what it can be part of, but it's physically possible to build. You should build it, whether that's a fuel cell, whether that's a mainspring generator, whether that's on-site batteries, whether that's on-site solar. That's all kind of mandatory. And in my mind, that's like the table stakes of building charging depots. Like you have to be good at that, and that's got to be part of it, because that's the way you're going to get your customers in the most value. Because we're going to be able to offer a better, price per kilowatt hour or price per mile or whatever metric there is. And then moreover, on the utility scale side, it goes back to the LCFS value. Wherever possible, it makes economic sense for us to bring renewables into our project. Not only does it kind of make sense from our business ethos and the way what we set out to do here, but we would be foolish to not take East Bay Community Energy's 100% renewable tariff for our project, because it makes our project better economics, and we can offer better pricing. We can offer better returns to investors. Like it's just better. And so the on-site integration is going to be mandatory from an economic standpoint. There's also, I think, there's going to be a bona fide resilience piece with our facilities and our ability to generate on-site with batteries on-site. We'll be able to kind of ride through any type of grid interruption, which is not nearly as much as people think. The grid is pretty darn reliable, but we are thinking about using our on-site distributed energy resources as a resiliency play as well.
Absolutely, just one holistic solution, and it's going to take a lot of parts and might vary quite a bit from depot to depot and location to location, geography to geography, technology to technology. It seems like, and so you guys seem like you got your hands around all the different opportunities. I mean, these are projects, these are concepts. Fleet electrification is not just about picking the vehicle. There are a lot of things to consider, and renewables is a big part of that. So I think people are in good hands at Forum here. Matt, just before we go, think about your classic fleet operator. Think about your classic tenant of a port. Think maybe of a drayage facility, or think of a drayage company out there. And if you had 30 seconds to give them, what would you tell them about electrification and about Forum?
I'd say that the way that California's set it up between low carbon fuel standard, CEC, fleet ready, make ready. I mean, there's 28 separate incentives. If you can put them all together, you got a great economic solution on your hands. And I can say that from what we've seen, electric vehicles are incredibly reliable. They're incredibly efficient. And if you can do this and improve your bottom line, there's a real opportunity. And I think that there's going to be those who move quickly are going to get some of that capacity off the grid. And so I think there's some real value in exploring this early while the incentives are rich. We have seen our ability to offer value and savings to customers today be pretty dramatic. And I would just say, working with folks who you feel are there to execute, who are true operators. I think that's we pride ourselves on our ability to build, own, operate much, in the way of infrastructure. And so I think that there's a lot there. There's a lot there for the fleets. And there's a lot to be, I think, concerned about. And I think there's a lot to be frustrated about with ARB. But I think that getting out there and doing something in a pilot and doing something today is going to pay dividends. I think your customers are going to reward you for it over time in their ESG compliance, and that getting out there and doing something early is going to be a win for the logistics and fleets out there. So I'd encourage anybody to take a look at us. I'd encourage anybody to take a look at our competitors too, for that fact. I think that, like I said, getting in there and accepting the fact that this is a transition that will happen in some way, shape, or form over the next several years, and getting yourself ahead of the game is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to consider out here. I mean, there's a lot of incentives available, but there's a lot to do with the utilities. There's a lot to do with the technology selections, with the EVSE selections, with the renewable installs. And I think the takeaway here for me is that you don't have to do it alone. There are groups like Forum that are doing this professionally. And if it fits your use case, think about it. Like Matt said, electrification is coming, and the worst thing you can probably do is nothing right now. Yeah. So get out in front of there, do some reach out, understand what your options are, understand what your timelines are. I think it's all a lot of solutions that can be provided by people like Forum Mobility and Matt here. So Matt, I want to say thank you for joining the Charge Cycle today. I really appreciate all your insights. If people want to learn more, where should they go to learn about the Forum?
You should go to www.forummobility.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. If anybody's listening, feel free to drop me a note. I pride myself on being pretty darn accessible. So if you want to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or matt.leduc@forummobility.com, feel free to hit me up. We'd be thrilled to talk to fleet operations, just get a sense for what you want. It isn't a transaction. I think we want to know how people want to buy, how they want to lease, how they want to do things. So there's a whole bunch of different ways you can get a hold of me. I encourage you to use any one of them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you also to the listener. Thanks for tuning into the Charge Cycle, where we talk all things fleet electrification. We'll be back next time. Get out there and get plugged in.